Good morning, Patriots and friends. Today we've got a really special ride planned, and in light of Memorial Day weekend and those who served, those who made the ultimate sacrifice, we're going to go somewhere special and shoot some amazing footage for you today. So come along and let's go for an amazing ride today. Alright friends, well, every good adventure has a snag. So we're here at Fort Sam Houston, and we were supposed to hit the visitor center here behind me and get some passes to allow us to get on any of the military bases here in San Antonio. But the visitor center over at Lackland is open 24/7, but the one here is not open on Saturdays and Sundays. A little misstep. So we're gonna, as a group, we're gonna ride over to Lackland, get some day passes for the military bases, and once we get the passes at Lackland, I'm not sure if we're gonna ride around Lackland or just shoot over to Randolph and start our adventure. But come along and find out. Let's go.
quick so we keep riding, right? You got a B-17 Flying Fortress over there. That's what bombed the shit out of Europe, but they lost so many people doing that in Europe. Right here you have the B-29. That dropped the atomic bomb on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Not that plane exactly, but that's what that airplane was.
So when we came in the highway, you saw those pretty unique towers on the bridge, right?
Yeah.
It's the clock tower. We can't see it from this angle, but you probably saw it as we drove around the building. The clock tower is, they say, where they held Geronimo when they captured him out west, right? So this whole fort was established after the Alamo. The Army used to occupy the Alamo. Then I think started construction during the Civil War, and a little bit after, this became the central logistical hub for the expansion westward. We just drove through what's called Infantry Post, and you saw that historic house that's painted red, right? That was Joe Stilwell from World War II. That was his quarters at one point. So he's the most famous resident. That building is open for tours, and it's like a little museum. It's got all period furniture in it and everything like that. But you also got a sense of, remember that long building with the upstairs, downstairs?
Yeah, with the white pickets.
Yeah, that's where they would pack in the infantry. That was their regimental barracks. That's where all the enlisted would be. And of course, the officers would be in the better houses. But here inside, this was my last active duty job, and I was on what they called the watch, right? You'd have 4 days on, 4 days off, and sometimes nights and sometimes weekends. And we had a big billy club that had all these keys on it. And one of our tasks on a Saturday morning was to go feed the animals. So the post veteran would leave a bag of feed, and we walk out at 7 o'clock, and all those keys on that billy club are rattling, and all the animals start following you, and then you dump it all out, and then they're just like whoop, 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 whoop. So that was one of the different. But that key, of course, I'm a curious guy. I take that big ass key ring and I start looking for a key to open up the clock tower, and I found one. So I went up in there. And when you get to the very top, you can find people would write their name in pencil in different places when they would pass through. So it's pretty cool stuff.
So Blackhawk, what kind of critters? Squirrels,
peacocks, ducks, deer.
Peacocks, ducks, and deer.
Yep.
Okay, the deer.
And people say, yeah, they're in there somewhere. They're hanging out.
I see peacocks back there, or at least I see one.
Yeah, there's one on that electrical box there, and there's one on that far tree.
A duck and a peacock.
Yep.
It's what looks like deer back there. I'm not sure if they're just like little.
Yep. So that was infantry post. That's where they kept the infantry, and then the other part of the base was the artillery post. So when we leave here, we're going to drive past first the generals, where all the general officers live, really beautiful homes. Then we'll go out to artillery post. And then our last stop on this base is going to be where the first military flight took place. So young Captain Douglas MacArthur was camped out with his troops when one of the birds kind of crashed nearby or buzzed the tents. And basically the aero squadron got booted off of here. So they formed Kelly Field in 1917. So they were flying here from 1910 to 1917. So we'll stop at the marker where that first flight took place. And then our last stop on Fort Sam is going to be the National Cemetery. So,
very cool.
Hoorah.
Hoorah.
I don't know.
You know what's funny is any place he ever lived or slept overnight, they call it the Eisenhower House now, you know? Like on the Newport Naval Station in Newport, there's a house where he spent the night, and they call it...
That's a legacy.
Yeah. Now it's the Eisenhower House. Now it has to forever be maintained. And So we're on historic Fort Sam Houston, right? So here is the place where the first military flight by the first military pilot. He wasn't the first, he was the third pilot trained, but it was the first time that the military had taken a military plane with a military pilot and flew it from a military field. So we call this the birthplace of military aviation. So you can see it was a Wright B Flyer, and it had skids. So some of the innovation he came up with is they put wheels on it, and he put a seatbelt in after a couple of close calls, you know. And later on, when we get on to Randolph Air Force Base, there's a really historic wide panoramic shot, shows 3 aircraft in the air over this whole place. And so you'll see where infantry post was and where artillery posts were, right? So Lieutenant George Kelly was the first fatality here, and that's when they booted the Aero Squadron off and they said, go down and start a new field, and that's why we have Kelly Field. So yeah, this is where it all happened, and San Antonio is the center of all this. And the most significant thing to talk about, where we're gonna go next was, Randolph was opened in 1930, and it was nicknamed the West Point of the Air, because they followed a curriculum that was as strict as West Point, Annapolis. And so, you know, now you had your third element of warfare, sea, land, and air. And so this place has become the birthplace of military aviation. But air power after World War II, we have enjoyed air supremacy in all theaters. As an Army guy, that's a huge blessing. You get pummeled if you don't have air superiority. Yeah, one of the stops we'll have later today, you'll get a real feel of that whole story of air supremacy. Any questions, comments, critiques? Everybody sweaty, feeling good?
So folks, as we celebrate Memorial Day, this is what it's all about. It's not hot dogs and hamburgers and a day at the beach. I realize a lot of people turn it into family time, and nothing wrong with that. But while you're with your family and you're enjoying the weekend, remember why we have this holiday. A lot have served, and some people here in the cemetery gave the ultimate sacrifice. We owe these people a lot. This country is such a wonderful place, and so many liberties and so many freedoms that wouldn't be possible if it wasn't for these people who signed on the dotted line to serve, to don the uniform of the most powerful fighting force ever to walk the planet, and to make the ultimate sacrifice. This weekend, we honor them.
Oh my gosh, it's amazing.
This is Dan Stock.
Yeah, this is so pretty.
There we go. This bust, this bronze bust, was built in 3 pieces and brought to the door and assembled here. You know, but these are, you know, some World War I propellers. We've got some member who has a 4-prop propeller he's traveled around with for 50 years. He reached out and he said, "Hey, I want to give this to you guys." So, but like just like the Stanley Cup, you see these big, beautiful awards there and stuff. Come this way. So we have. In this building, we have probably one of the largest collections of World War I original stuff, because our members who founded the organization were all World War I guys. And you know, the last one died in 2008, and a lot of their families give away this stuff to us to keep for safekeeping. So. The first line This is our library. We have so many books. We have like World War II books. We have old 8mm videos, cameras. We have so much stuff. Look, we just came around this place right here.
Yeah, I saw that. That's beautiful.
So we have a preservationist. Her job is over there. She uploads all of our history. This is the whole history of the organization, those green books there.
Wow.
So every time they would have a meeting each quarter, and they would have their notes and their discussions and their minutes, it all got bound and recorded and stored, and now we're basically digitizing it.
You know what's crazy? This is like the old school label maker that's raised.
Yeah. Yeah, then, you know, then we got all high speed in 1988. You know, we didn't do it that way anymore. But so I've filmed a few podcast episodes right in the front area there. So the most notable one I've just finished up was, where'd it go? Where's her book?
So what's your podcast about?
Oh, we just interview our members. So Eileen Collins, the first space shuttle pilot and female commander. So that's Kelly Field up there, which is pretty cool. I remember when we were at Fort Sam, come on this side of this wall here, and you can see Fort Sam Houston where we were. So here's 1, 2, 3 airplanes in the air. And this is the quadrangle with our water tower. Oh, that's the old Catholic chapel. So that was built in 1910. So that makes this, the quadrangle is somewhere over here out of this picture. But this would be that long runway. What does it say? But artillery post and infantry post. Anyway, that's what it looked like. No air conditioning back in the day.
Back when men were men.
This was the whole Air Force in 1914. And what's very notable is that there'll be a gentleman in our group who knew a guy who hung out with a guy, right? So there are only 2 generations or 2 handshakes removed. But there's a very tall fella here. This, I want to say it's him. No, it's him right here. This guy he was enlisted. He was one of the few enlisted pilots. And he ended up partnering with a flight surgeon in San Diego, and they figured out that they used to think that you had to be a good pilot with good senses to be a good, and they figured out, no, it's the vestibular, it's everything. You've got to have reference to the earth to keep your shit straight.
Right.
And so his name's William Ocker. He got court-martialed twice because he kept insisting, no, that's not true. You have to do that. And they were like, you're a little crazy. Mm-hmm. And he said later in his career, he said, yeah, I'm the only officer and only pilot in the whole military who has proof that he's sane, because I had 2 psychiatric evaluations, you know.
Like Claire Chanel.
Okay, we're going to kick off the first Memorial Day meeting of the Bikes Brews Conservative Views back here in the conference room. Then the military in 2005, they came up with a law, a rule, and maybe we can all politic Pete Hisks have to change this. It says that the active duty military can have no affiliation with nonprofits, non-government entities, right? So we used to have, right down the road here is the 4-star headquarters of Air Education and Training Command. And his deputy was a 3-star. So that anytime a new deputy rolled into town and was getting ready to take his job and everything, your additional duty is over there with the Dedalians, and you're going to be the deputy commander of the Dedalians. So we would have a retired 4-star and an active duty 3-star. So, we want to, yeah, let's go to and the club, it was not even open today, or the club isn't even open on Saturdays, but the club is, so play hard, party hard, right? The tower call sign when you're flying in here is called Hangover Tower.
Okay.
And then you transition your radio over to the ground control frequency and you go to parking. It's Hangover Ground. It's got that nickname because it's in the middle of the country here, and if you're in Mississippi or you're out in Nevada and you're a new rookie pilot or whatever, and you take a cross-country training flight, everybody comes back to San Antonio and they party in that club down there. It's notorious. But the whole culture, the Cold War hit, the internet showed up, and then that 2005 law, and the whole culture of the military just got kind of safe and conservative and cold. Yeah. Just kind of, so. But every Air Force hangar has its own bar, but that's their safe space now. They have their fun there. They have one, and then they're done. And nobody goes to the club on a Friday afternoon where all the units would go, and they would muck it up and have a good time. It doesn't happen anymore.
Too sanitary.
Yeah. That's why I recruited the Bikes, Brews, and Conservative Views to get after the morale of this base.
Yep.
That is your charge.
Okay, friends and patriots, thanks for coming on a ride with us today, and I hope you're enjoying your Memorial Day weekend and enjoying it with friends and family, and also remembering why we have this holiday. And so until we see you again, stay safe.